To be a successful civil engineer, you've got to be a mover and a shaker. What do I mean by that? I mean, you have to grab onto career opportunities, and if they're not there, create opportunities for yourself. And in this episode, I'm talking with Karen Islas, a young licensed engineer, but after talking to her, I feel like she's been engineering forever because she's accomplished so much. So in this episode, she's going to share how she's accomplished so much. She's also going to talk about how her family support was so important for her in being able to accomplish her goals. Now, before we jump in with Karen, a quick word from our sponsor, PPI. Before we dive in, we'd like to recognize our sponsor for this episode, PPI, a leader in engineering exam prep for the FE and PE exams. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode. All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the podcast for today. Karen Islas is a professional civil engineer and STEM advocate in California. She's worked in the public sector for her career. Karen, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Thank you, Anthony, for having me. It's such a pleasure. I've been a follower of your podcast and your Engineering Management Institute content. It did help me at some point when I was working to get my professional civil engineering license. So thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure to have you. I'm excited to talk about the things we're going to talk about today, getting into mentoring, associations, developing one's career. But let's just start off, Karen. Tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your career journey so far.
Sounds good. Okay, well, I've been in the civil engineering industry for about 10 years, counting some of my student time as well. I graduated high school, and as soon as I graduated high school, I enrolled myself in community colleges since I did not have any of the AP classes. I didn't have a lot of those engineering units. There's so many, right, at some point when you're working to get your degree. I grew up in the border city of Tijuana, and I actually was from K to 12th grade in Tijuana, crossing back and forth like millions of people in the region, which it's a really cool, interesting way of seeing it because there's so many people that cross the border back and forth every single day. That is one of the the busiest land border crossings in the world. So yeah, it's pretty awesome to know that fact that I just grew up in this area and it was normal for me to cross back and forth the region. And so in high school, I graduated, and then like I mentioned, was in community colleges. At some point, I was enrolled in multiple community colleges across the region. I think I had in a day, I had to go to different geographical locations. Since there was a moment that there were not a lot of classes, there were a lot of budget cuts. So since you just had to make it work when it came to that, I was very lucky though, because I had full support from my family. And, so I was able to focus on my undergrad duties without any trouble. And about 2.5 years to community college, then I transferred to San Diego State University in the civil engineering major. And that's when I started talking to people that have been in the program for a couple of years before me. And they started telling me, oh, there are no jobs. It's really, yes. And that's when I started noticing, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And luckily, talking to other people, I started looking for internships within, the region itself. So I actually got my first internships in the public sector, and I started working for one of the largest local jurisdictions in the county of San Diego. So it was really interesting experience. And then I was like a junior in junior year. That's when that happened. And then from there, in the last year of my degree, I enrolled myself in the capstone senior design project. And it did help me because I actually worked for a real life project. And it was for metropolitan planning organizations and a local jurisdiction as well. So it kind of gave me an idea of like, okay, maybe this is an area that I'd like to do. There's so much work to do, and there's so many things that I can learn from it. So that's when I started applying for a full-time opportunity. Fortunately, when I graduated, as soon as I graduated, I got my full-time opportunity and working for the largest local jurisdiction in as an assistant engineer, managing engineering capital projects and also the asset management and maintenance and stuff like that regarding in the local jurisdiction. I was there for about 4 years, counting some of my student time, and then I transferred to state service. And what's interesting about working for the public, and I'm really grateful about, I've been, you know how civil engineering is super broad, right? There's so many things that you can do with it. It's incredibly well-rounded. And what I really enjoyed was the fact that I been in different areas within civil engineering, right? I've been in field engineering, construction. I've been doing design. I've been doing plans preparation. I've been using CAD. I've been involved with the grant application, getting funding. I've been involved with project management. I've been involved with so many areas. Since, like I mentioned, it's super broad. And that's when I started noticing, like, at least at this point in my career, that I'm very happy I chose this career path, because I can do so many things with it. And I feel like I can go anywhere and I could do anything. And it's just so interesting. And you just continuously learn. So yeah, I really like civil engineering.
No, I mean, I agree with you that it's a very flexible career,
Correct.
especially with everything going on with infrastructure right now. There's so many different opportunities out there for
Yes,
civil engineers. And I guess one question I would have
of
for
course.
you on that is, what made you decide to go into the public sector? Was it something that your experience, or what was it?
I think it's, you know how it is sometimes you start looking for opportunities in different locations. And when you start applying for jobs and you start getting involved with the community, you start noticing, oh, okay, this standards came from this,
Mm,
from this agency. This specifications came from this agency. And then you start noticing that you can work for the jurisdiction, the agency that actually create the standards for the whole industry. And it started with that. And then also in what's interesting in San Diego State, I did have a lot of professors that were working in these agencies, or they were part of like they call it technical expert roundtables, that were able, they were part of the reporting, they were part of the analysis of the processes of actually creating these standards and specifications for civil engineering, at least in California. So it was kind of like I was exposed pretty quickly in
mm.
the in kind of like since the beginning of my student time. I started noticing, like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. And then of course I was really, really interested in freeways. So it was like, okay, transportation, it's like we were saying, civil engineering is really broad, but transportation itself, I feel like I can do a lot of the stuff that I like, which is engaging in the community,
Mm.
right? I do like to, do public speaking. I like to be involved. Even sometimes it could be difficult, but you learn a lot. You learn a lot for that community that you're, kind of serving. So I feel like it was a good fit for me. I do consider myself a very social person. So I did not see myself necessarily all the time in a cubicle. I don't know if I can explain it. I feel like
No,
it
that's
just,
good. I think that's great. I
yes,
mean, I
I
think
feel like it was a good fit.
yeah, and I think civil engineering, I think one of the nice things about it is
Mhm,
there are a lot of opportunities to engage with people in civil
mhm,
engineering, working on
mhm,
project teams, working with the public, doing public hearings.
mhm,
There are
mhm,
many
mhm.
ways to do that. And so I think
Exactly.
it's one of the benefits of this profession for sure, for
Exactly.
those that want to do that. And so I guess you've done a lot of stuff in your career, kind of not outside of your job. Like, you've gotten involved with a lot of other organizations, which I want to ask you about now, because I think that
Yes,
that's one of the ways that young engineers can really help to develop themselves and develop their careers.
I
And
agree.
one of the things you've done is you've gotten involved with multiple professional organizations. Maybe you could talk about that experience and how that has helped you grow.
Of course, yes. So again, I think my first involvement with with professional organizations were probably in the student chapters when I was in the community college, right? I During that time, it was mainly like, okay, get to know people, get to network, how is like the actual field like? And it did help a lot. Since you sometimes you get like field trips and you get, some exposed experience through that, right? Through that whole world of civil engineering. It's a very strong network. It's a very, in a way, it's small. Everybody knows each other. So at some point, you're going to work with a lot of people, which is great. And definitely, I remember San Diego State did a lot of the a lot of trainings on like technical interviews and career networking, and most of them, they were facilitated by ASCE and in American Society of Civil Engineers, and APWA, which is American Public Works Association. And that's when I started noticing, like, okay, how important this, these organizations are for your career development. And like I mentioned, as part of my conversations of getting my first internships, were because I was able to talk to people that had connections within these professional organizations, right? That they knew about a job. Typically companies, either private, public, they reach out to the student chapters and they'll
Mhm.
share, right? There's a full-time opportunity. There's there's an internship opportunity. We're looking for students. They're typically, it's a good way to reach out to people and find new talent or new people that they're looking into, getting an opportunity in the field. So as part of my kind of also my mentorship sessions that I've done in the past, I always share with the newer people that be like, hey, if you can involve yourself with a professional organization, try to do it as soon as possible. It's just so useful for you, like I mentioned, for your career. And then they also, what's cool, they do events like social networking, like kind of they do golf tournaments, they do a bunch of different things, they even do baseball games. So you get to connect with the industry outside of work, and it does help a lot when you are working on a project, to have that camaraderie, right? To have that connection before working on a big project makes things a little bit easier for everybody.
No, it's great. I mean, you mentioned a lot of different benefits there. I mean, one, just like
Mhm.
developing some of your professional skill sets, like the interviewing, like the resumes when you're a student.
Yes.
Secondly, getting those opportunities to those internships and to those jobs, because these organizations will come right to the colleges, which is great.
Yes.
And I think lastly, what you just mentioned about the networking is a huge piece of it, right? Starting to build your
Yes.
professional network, starting to build, I mean, because really in your career, I mean, all of your opportunities pretty much come from the people that you know and the network that you've built.
Exactly.
And so, you have a
Exactly.
lot of great experiences that you've taken away from those
Yes.
professional organizations. And you recently graduated from the San
Hmm.
Diego Leadership Alliance
Hmm.
Institute, the 2022 cohort. Can you tell us what that entails and what you learned from that experience?
Of course. So this just happened. It was from January to June, just graduated last June. As you can see, as part of my conversation, I've been very involved in engineering, right? Just overall, I've been trying to learn my network, and grow it and learn about it. It's so much to learn, right? But then I noticed that I have also that side of like developing my social areas, right? Like it does happen in civil engineering, but there's so many other things that I can learn that I feel like I'm more complex than just an engineer, right? I also have different sides, I have other hobbies, I have other interests. So by involving myself with San Diego Leadership Alliance, which is SDLA, I had to go through an application process, kind of like standing for something that I feel passionate about, which in my area has been for a couple of years, maybe since I began, being in the full-time opportunities, to try to open more doors and try to make more visibility for women in STEM overall, and of course in civil engineering, since still, there's some there's not a lot of women still in STEM. It's getting a little bit better, but trying to create more visibility and more resources. So that was kind of like the idea when I applied for SDLA, and I went through an interview process, and I was very lucky to be selected and was part of the 20 people that were selected. And what I really enjoyed about that experience was I was sharing the classroom with young professionals in different industries. So it was
Mm.
not only engineering, right? So I had real estate professionals, I had lawyers, social workers, policy advisors, a little bit of everything, that they were beginning in their career. They wanted to create a connection. They wanted to create a good foundation of, like, even we got public speaking experience. We got a lot of resources regarding to be a leader in our communities, depending on what sector we're in, right? So it was a little bit of I even remember I had like stress management. It was really, really well rounded. It was really, really interesting. And I feel like in civil engineering, at least in my experience, I have not had that experience before, you know, so like you might have, I might have, you know, have like, okay, public speaking, a little bit of the community engagement, but it was more personal. So kind of like developing my person before I can be a good leader, before I go out there and help people.
Mm,
So for example, in your case, you're a content creator and you're helping and you're giving resources to the civil engineers, which I think there's not a lot of people that do that. You see what I mean?
right,
There's some out there, but I don't feel like there's a lot of support, mainly at the beginning where you don't know what, you know, you want to go, where do you want to grow? There's, like we were saying, it's so broad.
right.
So I don't know that it's just endless journeys that you can take depending on your experience, right? So yeah, so like I mentioned, SDLA was the best experience I had so far. I'm not gonna lie, it was one of the busiest years in probably in my recent years. It's crazy. I actually passed my professional civil engineer license a year ago. I didn't have any of the three. In California, there's 3 exams. So I was doing the full-time, right? Full-time work. I was studying, you know how it is. You have to study
Sure.
after work, you have to study during the weekends. And I was doing SDLA, which it was pretty much every Saturday for 8 hours.
Wow.
But you know what? I feel like it was so technical. My life was so technical. So I needed that balance of having that social connection with people and
Right.
learning about other issues in life, not only mine, right? So it's just, it allowed me, I feel like, and that's why probably I passed. So that's when I noticed like, okay, I have to continue doing this, you know, this engagement, this social engagement. I think it's for me. It did help me a lot. So yeah, kind of like a perspective on of the timing of SDLA. I think it was a great timing.
No, it's great. I love the point is that you have to get outside of just the engineering organizations as well and get to
Exactly.
meet other people. And I think for civil engineers, it's especially important because we're very involved in the communities locally. So,
Yes.
you know, it's
Yes,
important for us to meet
exactly.
other business professionals, other business owners, and, you know, get a feel for that and build the network. And I think
Yes.
also to your point, you do need a break sometimes from the technical side of
Yes.
engineering and
Yes.
build up the non-technical side of it.
Yes.
I think that's awesome. And congrats on passing your
Thank
exam because
you.
that is a
Thank you.
huge, huge
Yes.
challenge. I know,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
for
And
sure.
it took me so long. It's just, you know, trial and error, which is okay. I learned from the process, but it's so interesting to me that the moment I started prioritizing, like you said, not just the technical side, that's when I started doing well.
Right.
So anyway,
Well, I think there's something to that. I think when you give yourself some deadlines and you force yourself and put yourself a little bit under pressure, sometimes you
yes.
perform a little bit better, you know?
Yeah.
I think that
Yes.
that definitely happens. Now
Yeah.
you also serve as a mentor for engineering classes at San Diego State University. Talk to us about that experience, some things that you've learned, how it works with the mentors. Tell us about that.
Yes, of course. So wow. For me, mentorship, and I'm so fortunate that I started getting involved even when I was a student, right? I started doing like the K to 12 outreach and going to little like events that they have for STEM. And I started, it's just amazing, you know, what you learn from these kids. It's just amazing. I feel like it just gives you a perspective and in a way gives you a like a how can I say it? Like a hope for the future in a way, right? So sometimes,
Right.
you know, when you get overwhelmed with the news and everything that's going on in the world, and you go to these things and you're like, oh my God, yes, you know, we're gonna be okay. And then you know, as part of being I've been in the Greater San Diego Science and Engineering Fair, and it's amazing what these kids think about. Like when I was their age, I was like, not at all there, you know, it's pretty amazing what you can learn from them.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I started, like I mentioned, probably since I was in the community college, I started doing some of that. And then also actually at my work, at my current work, I enjoy helping the recent hires, going through the organizational process and the whole thing, like kind of like tools and resources to be able
Mm,
to kind of like the onboarding part of it that sometimes you know, as somebody that has been kind of newer, remember, right? Kind of the things that you had to look
right.
at or whatnot. And then also as part of the experience has been going to the introductory class for civil engineering at San Diego State, which I've done for like 5 years now. And it's just amazing. It's kind of connecting to that experience of learning so much from the newer generations, right? it's great when you get those awesome emails that, they say that something that you share with them helped them, or they feel inspired, or they feel like they can do it too. And it's just very fulfilling. And I think, at some point in my career, I felt lost and I felt, normal, right? I felt like I don't know what I want to do. But I feel like continuously doing the mentorship has helped me
Hmm.
kind of like, getting that higher purpose in a way than just everyday work. Because sometimes the stuff that we do, at least for me, the projects are really, really big and really, really huge that they take years to you see
Right.
the end result. And that's how it is civil engineering, right? Sometimes it's a process, you have to go through a process. So the mentorship is just allows me to feel like I am helping in some way. And I do like to help with resources. Like I mentioned, I also like to share some of my mistakes, some of the things I should have done better, some of the things that I learned along the way that I could have done, or in a way of like sharing experience like that. So yeah, I really like doing that. And yeah, this is, yeah, probably is one of the areas that I enjoy the most about our career.
No, that's great. And I think that there are a lot of benefits. I mean, obviously, it's great anytime you can give back and help the next generation to grow and
Mhm,
help them with some
mhm,
of their goals and finding
mhm.
their way. But I also think that there are benefits for individuals who mentor in terms of your communication skills, your leadership abilities,
True,
right? Your
true.
confidence.
Yes.
And so I would say to all those civil engineers out there that if you have the opportunity to mentor, I mean, you could even mentor within your own organization,
Yeah,
like Karen said. I mean, if you don't have time to get to a local school or you don't have one near you, but anything you could do,
exactly.
I think, to mentor, it's beneficial for those you're mentoring, and it's also beneficial for you. And I think that that's something
Exactly.
that is very
Ex
beneficial.
exactly. Mhm.
So Karen, you talked a little bit before about being a woman in the civil engineering industry. Obviously, it's something where we're constantly trying to get more women involved, and everyone's still trying. We've done a series on the show here, Women in Civil Engineering.
Yes.
But maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you have faced in your career in this industry as a woman.
Correct. I think that's a great question because I always like to kind of like place a little bit of perspective of kind of like my upbringing, because I grew up in an environment that it was incredibly supportive. Okay. So since I can remember, my direct family, like mom, dad, grandmother, brother, my cousins, everybody told me that I could do anything that I want in my life. I
Mm,
can reach any goals. I can, even if I fail, they've never doubted me. Okay. So this is how my brain was programmed, right? So I was programmed to think that I can do everything and anything that I want, which is crazy because I can see how if I did not have these skills, like I said, since my childhood, and like, of course, the resilience and the self-confidence, I think I would have, it could be tough. And I could think about some of the people that maybe did not have that upbringing, and,
mm,
some of the struggles that they have to go through being in the industry. So I think it's an overall thing that I like to remind myself in a way. There's always going to be people in the world that they're just committed to misunderstand you, regardless of the situation, right? It doesn't matter what you do, what you do not do. It's just, that's what they do. So it's kind of like you go through your times, and then you start noticing with experience and noticing who actually has your back and who doesn't. And at the end of the day, a lot of the things that happen are more the perspective of that person, mainly that yourself. It's your commitment. You're still a work in progress. You're constantly learning. But for example, like I remember at some point, like I was like probably my first year out of college, and one of the engineers that have been there for so long, and like I said, I did not, it was just very, very, it was very interesting the way he said it, but he was like, oh, what did they teach you in school? But this person has been there for like 25 years. So it's
mm.
kind of like, okay, like luckily for me, I didn't feel sad. I actually laughed because I was like, okay, person, you literally forgot when you started, right? But then it's funny because, I could imagine some other person felt affected by it, right? It felt like, oh my God, that's kind of mean, whatever. But what's interesting, and I feel like as time progresses, I think, and that's part of the things that maybe we could do better as an industry overall. It's there's a lot of people that have been for so many years in the industry, and I feel like they forget, or they kind of forgot when they started, right? So I feel like a little bit of empathy with the newer generations, like they were not born knowing what to do. They had to
Mm.
struggle and learn, and to get in this place that they're in, and the knowledge that they have and the stuff that they do. So kind of like I feel like they forgot sometimes that they started at some point not knowing what they were doing or where do they want to go. So I think that would be a great course of action in the future, to try to implement that and try not to forget all the struggle that you've been through. And then also as a kind of like as an extra thing, which again, I do talk to people from all over the world. I talk to people because engineering, I feel like it's so you can just do engineering all over the world, which actually attracts a lot of people from different places, and in different age groups. And I am positive that things are a little bit better now. I've heard that years ago the industry was even like way more tough than now. So I think we're moving in the positive direction. We're moving in the right direction. But like always being aware of your person, right? And think about the person that you're talking to. You have the power to shape this person, either for good or bad. So anyway, it's an interesting thing, but I feel like as a woman, it's mainly maybe fighting that subconscious bias that sometimes exists within their person. But at the end of the day, it's a personal thing, and then they make it into the workplace. Some people, I'll say.
Well, that's great. And what would you like, building on that, for the women out there listening, like that want to be leaders in the civil engineering field? Like, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah. So it's a great question, because it's a lot of the things that I feel like I've been able to accomplish has been thanks to, again, the support that I've received, again, from my family and friends. And then, of course, I met great people in the industry that also have guided me and mentored me. And, I'm so, so happy about that. So as part of the difficult things that I think I continuously learn, it's to be able to listen to people that I agree with and people that I do not agree with as well.
Hmm.
Because I feel like if we want to become a leader in an organization or a company, you're going to be managing people that believe in you and people that they do not believe in you. At the end of the day, that's the reality, right? You cannot be, perfect for everybody, because we're not perfect, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like being aware of our surroundings, right, of like where people may be standing and things like that. At the end of the day, you have a common goal, which is delivering that project, and serving the public, whatever that is. But at the end of the day, you're still working on the same goal, regardless of people's opinions. And overall, I think there are gonna be times they're gonna feel like sad or lost. So that's kind of part of life, right? Definitely have that support network built. Identify your allies, who actually want the best for you. They want the best for you. And it's okay. And some other thing that I think it did help me, it's to try to not take anything personal. Sometimes people have their reasons, and sometimes they support you, and then sometimes they don't, and then sometimes they don't, and then sometimes they do. So it's too much to control, that I think it's not even part of your area of control, right? So it's mainly to understand that's how humans are, and I feel like that's how we've been functioning for years and years. So
Yeah,
anyways.
control what you can control. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's great. And I think too, something that you said before, about your family and the
Yes.
positive reinforcement. I think that
Yes.
that's, that was great. And you're lucky to have that background for
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
think what you said, having that mindset is so important. Especially I could see it for a woman in an industry that there's not as many women, to be able to
Mhm.
stay strong and, go up against a lot of stuff that you have to go up against.
Yes.
And I would also say, for those engineers listening that are kind of leaders in their organizations, I think
Mhm.
they can help to instill that mindset, right? And the people that
Yes.
work on their teams.
Yes.
I think that's one of the best parts about being a leader is your ability to not just mentor people, but help them create better habits for themselves, better mindsets. Because that, like, even after you're not leading them anymore, it's still going to have a big impact on their careers and really on their lives, quite frankly.
Yes. Yes.
And so I think that that's a really important thing that you said there, because it's not always up to us and how you're brought up and what kind of mindsets are given to you, but you can develop them and you can do some stuff on your own. It's not as easy, but I just think knowing how important the mindset is,
Yes.
is just a very important aspect of growth in your career.
Yes.
Um, One last thing before we wrap
Mhm.
up this segment that I want to ask you about is STEM. I know you're passionate about STEM in the
Mhm.
civil engineering industry. Just talk about, your thoughts on STEM and how, civil engineers can get kind of more involved.
Of course. So I read and actually I like to share it because I think it was really, really interesting. The report that I think they do it every year. They publish every year, and it's called, let me just get this real quick so I don't mess it up. It's called Women in the Workplace Study, which is the state of women in corporate America. And I think it can be, it can be found online, but I think the website that I have is leanin.org. I could share it later. But basically, a lot of the findings in this report where analysis throughout all the industries for sure, but it can be applied as well to civil engineering and part of the also public sector and a little bit of different areas within the workplace. And it is very, I really like the graphics, and I really like the numbers and the analysis that they use and the approach in a way of showing people that these are our findings, and you can interpret however you think will work best for your company or for your industry or whatnot. So I think education, it's such a big part, because I constantly, like I mentioned, when I talk to the younger generations and the people that are just getting out of high school, they have a different mindset, they have a different brain, they have a different priorities, they're different than even us or like even older generations. So it's that constant awareness that STEM, it's an ever-changing industry, ever-changing field, like technology wise, right? The softwares that we have right now probably are not the same as we had 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So things are done different, right? And there's a lot of innovation going on. There's a lot of things, at least speaking with my experience at transportation, for example, there are different criteria that I have to, as an engineer, you have to think about than maybe like 20 years ago. Like, for example, for the PE, for the 8-hour exam, now they ask you about multimodal transportation, which maybe in the I don't know, 10 years ago during the exam, it was not necessarily one part of the exam. So
Right.
that's the part of like how it constantly changes, right? And I feel like if civil engineers, they can help again, because STEM itself is changing. And I think civil engineering goes within STEM. It's under the STEM umbrella. So to not forget, right, that we are still within that change. And if things change and progress, hopefully we're not left behind, because things are going to keep moving. And at the same time, and I see it, and it's great how we are moving into different technologies, like I mentioned. So it's just moving so fast. So I think it's kind of good to be aware of those changes, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, listen, with all the infrastructure needs in our
Yes.
country, civil engineers are going to be critical going forward, and we need more civil engineers. And the only
Mm-hmm.
way to get them is to get out there and talk about civil engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come right back with Karen, and we'll finish up with the civil engineering hot seat. We'll be right back. All right, we are back with Karen Islas. Karen is a professional civil engineer in California, working on transportation projects in the public sector. And now we're going to put Karen on the civil engineering hot seat. You ready, Karen?
Sure.
All right. The first question, do you have any specific rituals that you practice every day? For example, do you have a specific morning routine or a lunchtime routine or just something that you do consistently every day that has contributed to your success?
Sure. I think keeping in touch with my friends and my, network, either work-wise and my friends and family, definitely. I think I probably text them every single day, or at least share stuff on, videos on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. So we always in touch. Also, of course, I love the coffee in the morning. It's just the smell of coffee. It's just, it's just, I love it. Maybe I'm like addicted to it, but I don't know if I don't think I get headaches. So I'm not sure. I don't know if it's mainly like a mindset thing of like, okay, I have to like wake up now or like be, productive. And then also something I've been doing for the last year that I think I like a lot, it's working out. I think some of the things that working on getting a little bit better. Sometimes I lack patience. I'm a little bit better at it now, but kind of like to see the progress real quick and stuff like that. So I feel like with working out, it's such a slow but steady process. You have to constantly do it literally every single day if you can. And even if you advance 0.005%, you're still advancing. So I
Hmm,
do see, so it kind of helps me in that part of my brain.
that's great. No, that's awesome.
Yes.
Do you have one book that you would recommend or one book that's been really helpful for you in your career or life, just in general, that you remember, that you always remember?
Yes, so I do love to read. I think there's always something to learn overall. Uh, I remember the book that I read when I was like 16 years old, and I think it kind of like helped me. It's just the idea of, I guess, dreaming, right? And then going outside your box or whatever. It was The Alchemist. I don't know if
Oh,
anybody's
it's,
familiar
yeah,
with it.
one
I
of my
loved it.
favorites.
Or
Yeah.
yes, yes. So it
Paulo
just,
Coelho.
how
That's a great book. Yeah.
it's a great book. So yeah, I think it was a good time to read that, back then and be able to, dream a little bit. And I still remember it, till this day. And some of the other stuff I've been reading has been mainly like, just a little bit of fiction. I, of course, sure, I read like, I think in 2010 or something, I read Hunger Games. I loved Hunger Games, so it's just a little bit of everything. So get the imagination going.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, The
Yes.
Alchemist is one of my favorites. I just actually
Yes.
reread it. It's a really good book.
Yes.
All right. So if you think of some of the managers that you've had in your career so far, and I'm not asking you to name names, but just
Of
thinking
course.
about the managers that you've had, who was your favorite in terms of like, what are the skill sets of some of your favorite managers? Just trying to understand, like in the civil engineering world, what makes for a great manager?
That's a great question. So I think like part of the process of my growth in the industry has been I had really good managers overall, right? Meaning that they've they trusted me, they gave me opportunities, like high level presentations, go out there and talk to the community itself. Like you had to kind of give me that trust before and then be able to prove it to you, but the fact that they trusted me before. So I think as overall managers, I've had really good ones. I had a couple of ones that have not been necessarily the best or the best fit for me, but you can always learn from any of these managers, right? Like, for example, the ones that were not a best fit for me, I'll say, oh, I don't want to be like that. So at least you're learning that, right? So I don't want to be like that. That's not, anyways, but you learned that you don't want to be like that. So that's a good thing. But then I think overall, like as a skill, I feel like when managers are so self-aware, right, of the power that they have to influence people, right, and at the same time they have that power to influence people, they actually create opportunities for everyone, right? They're aware, they look at you, they look at this person. Okay, for example, Karen may not be good at this, and that's okay, but they'll see and they'll be like, she may be good at that awareness of the people that they have under their purview. So that I think being aware of who do you have in your team, and at the end of the day, talking about civil engineering for the last couple of minutes, it's very broad, so you're gonna find a spot that you can shine on. So I think having that self-awareness, it's great.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
All right, I got one last question for you here.
Cool.
We call it the civil engineering career elevator advice question. So if you got into an elevator with a civil engineer and you had 30 to 40 seconds with him or her to give some career advice in 30 to
That's
40
great.
seconds, what
Yeah.
would it be?
Okay. 30, 40 seconds.
No
Just think
pressure.
about this. I know, right? And it's like, I love talking. Anyway, I think listen to yourself. I feel like nobody knows better than yourself, even though you're still a work in progress. Again, you're still learning. Listen to yourself. And again, when you're gonna feel sad and lost and overwhelmed at some point in your career, that's gonna happen 100%. Like that's part of the growth part as well. You're gonna feel like that, and make sure that you have your network and your support network identified, right? So because you're gonna have to rely on them when you don't feel like your best person or your best self. So yes.
Awesome. No, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's good advice, right? You got to listen to your
Thank you.
gut and kind of go with it and stay true to that throughout your career. Well, listen, Karen, you've done so much stuff already and you're so young. So it's great to be able to spend some time with you. And
Thank you.
I'm kind of feel like I'm motivated. I want to hang up and
Oh, come on. You are
but
doing so much. Like I said, you're literally filling an area that I don't think we have in civil engineering,
well, no, I
commitment to
appreciate that.
professional development. It's great.
But we're able to do it just because we do get so many people like you that can come on, that are willing to take some time out of their days. And that's really what it takes. And so again, thanks for spending time with us. Good luck with everything in your career. And I
Thank
hope
you.
one of
Thank
these
you.
days, maybe we'll get to meet at one of these conferences along
Oh,
the
for
way.
sure. Let's do it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Karen. Take care.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Karen. She is full of energy. I hope that you can take some of her energy, but really recognize the real value in this interview for me was you've got to take opportunities in your career by the hand and run with them. And I hope you can do just that. Please consider subscribing to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and leaders. I hope to see you next week.